Greetings, Culturians, and welcome back to the channel. Boy, do we have something to talk about. It seems that this fella, Leonardo DiCaprio, is not as popular as he used to be. Now, I could have told you that a long time ago. He doesn't seem to pull the numbers anymore. He's had 2 consecutive failures in the theaters, and one of them is just a love letter to Antifa, which I think is a big problem, and I'm sure you probably agree. But we need to take a look at just how much money they are willing to spend on this guy and how poorly whatever they spend performs, because it doesn't make money anymore, and neither does Leo. Here we go. Now, before we get started, just a quick reminder. I'm trying to get to 50K. You're trying to help me get to 50K. So double check you're still subscribed to the channel. Hit the like button while you're at it, and go ahead and turn on the notifications to all notifications so you don't miss anything. Now, let's get ready for some commentary because I'm interested in what you think. So stick around. This one is short, but worth it. One battle after another, or one woke thing after another, or one Antifa promotion after another is projected to lose $100 million. I'm sure it's going to lose much more than that. And as Smashing Machine, which is also a huge failure, because guess what? Dwayne Johnson is not a movie star. And many others are starting to, well, realize that big budget films aren't going to bring in big audiences anymore because it's all DEI woke storytelling. It doesn't matter what the story is because there's very little of that and a lot of preaching. And I think people are tired of it. What about you? So every Monday morning, Virginia-based cinema owner Mark O'Meara pores over grosses to see how the newest releases are playing in the area. Last weekend didn't offer much to celebrate as some well-reviewed Oscar contenders collapsed at the box office, and of course they did. Again, these films aren't made for the audiences anymore. They're made for, well, virtue signaling and for the Oscars. So if you've ever heard the term Oscar bait, it's got another layer now. It's called woke storytelling. And every one of these failures come on the shoulders of some really bad ideas and some overbloated budgets that they'll never overcome. Leo DiCaprio has had that more than a few times. I mean, how can you not forget, Tears of the Flower Moon, or whatever that woke piece of garbage actually was called. Now, A24's Smashing Machine was a huge waste of money and time and apparently a contract with Dwayne Johnson. You see, Dwayne was playing MMA fighter Mark Kaur, and that thing died rather quickly, according to O'Meara, and nobody really liked or went to see something called Roofman with Channing Tatum. This is not new, guys. I think you all can probably agree. It's going to continue to spiral downward until they realize you have to make movies for an audience. I know, go figure. But from O'Meara's words, it sounds like this is a disaster that the theater owners, the exhibitioners, can't afford anymore. In fact, it was slow as heck, says O'Meara. I thought the movies were good. There was a lot of hype with them, but it just didn't happen. And you know what? It's not going to. The DC metro area wasn't the only place that those films failed to connect. Roofman debuted to a paltry $8 million, while Smashing Machine endured a brutal 70% decline in its sophomore outing, which means its second weekend was a disaster. It's bringing in revenues of $10.1 million domestically is pretty garbage. And as for everything else that was aimed at quote-unquote adults, Kiss of the Spider-Woman, a $34 million budgeted musical adaptation with Jennifer Lopez, that fizzled to $850,000. Now, mind you, this is embarrassing to all of these actors who think they're hot stuff and have never been told, hey, probably a bad idea to do that, or you probably shouldn't say that, or anything else, because they've always been supported by a close-knit circle of friends and supporters and sycophants that will always tell them everything they make is great. The problem is, it's not true, and it hasn't been for a really long time, and the studios are still living in the past as far as what they can do and get away with. Well, they just can't, and they won't be able to in the future, which is why Disney is not even slowly dying anymore. It's completely collapsing. But to be even more specific, and that's really important in my space, I just want to show you something about Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another, which again is a love letter to violent extremists. One Battle After Another, led by Leonardo DiCaprio, struggled to break out despite being hailed as a generational masterpiece. And again, that's only with critics. It's not with real audience members who just weren't interested in this. And once they learned about it and what it was actually promoting, I think they weren't going to show up ever again. Does the global haul of 140 million stay impressive when you take a look at how much money it costs to make? And this is another lie that the mainstream will promote, is that it really only will take 300 million to break even. Well, that's flat out a lie. That's only if you double up on what it costs to make it, not even include anything that it takes to promote, and recognize that, well, there's a lot of other things that go into the mix when it comes to breaking even. You see, Warner Brothers spent at least 130 million on production, and reports have gone as high as 175, where I'm relying on the 160 million as the actual number. By the time you spend on production, at least that much money, you're going to spend more than half on promotion of the film going forward, more likely about the same amount. And you're not even close to breaking even if you get triple the amount of the production, because it just doesn't matter anymore when you're only taking away half of the box office revenue. The exhibitors aren't even getting enough of a cut anymore that they can just shake off anything with even the sale of concessions. And while they claim only a $70 million effort in the promotional department, we all know that that's pretty much a lie. Not to mention the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio is one of the few stars who maintain a contract that will allow for him to get first dollar gross on his movies. That's if he actually has an offer in his contract to do that. Not sure, but that's most likely. And I think a lot of studios are going to recognize now that Leo isn't a leader in the box office anymore. Look, Leonardo has done very well throughout his career, a lot of excellent picking and great agent work to make sure that he stayed on top of the box office stars that actually get the big contracts. The problem is, Hollywood doesn't work that way anymore. You see, these prestige type movies have failed to create a sense of FOMO among audiences, says Fandango's box office analyst Sean Robbins. They weren't eventized enough. And you know what? With that, we can agree. The problem is that people have come to expect movies to be available in the home much sooner than they used to be. And that's a bigger problem than maybe even I give it credit for, because there are people who aren't going to theaters anymore because they're fine waiting the 4 weeks before they get to see something. And they spectacularly failed at what an event-sized movie is now. Well, it's none of this stuff, and I don't think they'll ever be able to find their way back because Disney can't find a creative story to save their lives, and they really need it. They kind of just remake stories they made before, and then they sprinkle in a little bit of the ideology, and it promptly tanks. The only success they've had is something very similar to what the actual story is, or a shot-for-shot success, and that's how you end up with something like Lilo and Stitch. The original creator is involved. You can greenlight a sequel live action to that particular film, and it might be successful as long as you keep the gang together. The problem is when you go about putting the message into anything, it dies. And doesn't matter if you're considered a star, because you aren't famous for the message. You're famous for delivering high quality entertainment that an audience actually wants. And that's going to be something that a lot of the spreadsheet warriors that are now occupying Hollywood are able to recreate, because it's not in their wheelhouse, because they never actually worked in the real world before what they're doing now. There is one positive story here, potentially. It's the case of Roofman, as described here in the Variety article. It's backed by Paramount Pictures and Miramax. It has a very lean budget of $19 million, so that $8 million first weekend start, it might not be as bad as we think, especially if this thing is already sold in future sales, not just to the digital market, but also to maybe some streaming services. And as much as I would like to say that I agree with the fact that adult movies aren't hitting very well, I'll just put it this way. Right now, film revenues are about 20% behind those of 2019. That's very telling. It means people are so tired of the message and garbage films that they're not even giving them a shot. They're not going to the theaters. I've been saying that for a while now, but it's very truly obvious that anything tied to Disney is untrusted. Just take a look at the results from Tron Ares. And even if you actually put an actual quote unquote movie star, by some people's definition, in the lead role of any of these things, that actor may or may not have any pull anymore. In fact, when it comes to Jared Leto and Leonardo DiCaprio and a few others, maybe even Dwayne Johnson, who was never really a superstar, people aren't going to be drawn anymore because they don't trust the studio or the label that made the film. Anyway, that's it for today. My time is over. Your time has just begun. So do me a favor. Let me know in the comments section below what you think actually happened to these films that were supposed to be blockbusters with all of these super awesome stars, because I'd like to know. As always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya! But probably not at any of these message movies.